the Lachlan Galvin situation, Sowie, is pretty much a mess. So where do we go from here? Will he get back into the first grade, or should the Tigers just release him now?
Yeah, it's a complex situation that's always evolving. We're hearing legal stuff has happened now from Isaac Moses and Lachie Galvin's team. I think the one thing we're forgetting is that he's a 19-year-old kid, and he's made a big decision on his future. You've got to respect that. You might not agree with it, but you do have to respect it. They didn't play well yesterday. The West Magpies, I think they got beat 22-10. So, it's always tough going back to reserve grade, but the amount of pressure that he would have been under to go down there and play, I don't know where they go. I think there's a world where you could see him back playing because he helps your side, but there's also a world where it's untenable. They need to, but what do they get back for it? For instance, I tossed up last week on my podcast, Dylan Brown can go to the Knights now. West Tigers can pick a player from the Knights, and then Lachie Galvin can go to Parramatta. But if you're the Tigers, you need a back rower. You could get Dylan Lucas, you could get KPP. But is that, where do they stand for that? I think it's completely different, boys. When I was playing, I didn't finish a contract. And I signed with Penrith in 2013. I got offered 1 year at the Dragons. I signed for 4 years at the Penrith Panthers. The club didn't want me there. They put me back to part-time, and I ended up going over to the Super League and playing. Now, for me, that was the best thing to get away from it all. But we've got to, the club plays some fault in it as well. We can't just think that it's all the manager and the player and stuff like that. They went to Lachie Galvin early. They probably knew that he was going to say no because they'd been heading down that route. And we all know those conversations in the closed dressing rooms, Lee, it's totally different to what we're seeing.
That's right.
The speculation around it all is really confusing because we don't know the full story. We just get drip-fed bits of who's trying to control the narrative, which is confusing for everyone. So I think they should just let him go, to be personally honest. But I can't see that happening unless they get a legal interference, which they might be getting, or they get a player back.
I think
you have a proper.
Sorry,
I was going to say, do you have a proper conversation where obviously everybody's got their opinions? Obviously Lachlan's got what he wants, the club wants what they want. Do you sit down with some senior players or all senior players and say, how do you want to handle this? Do we need him in the short term now? Or do we sit down and get around a table and say, can you commit to us now to help us in the present? We understand your decision in the future. Or do you send that cultural message saying that, well, he's not buying in. We only want people who, as you say, are on the bus. I just wonder whether there's a maturity to have that conversation and say, what do you think we should do?
I think that's the bigger question. What is this new Tigers identity under Shane Richardson, under Benji Marshall? Is it a new Tigers identity, or are they still going to be a club that seems to lose its players to the bigger clubs? I mean, it was only a decade or so ago that Moses, that Tedesco, that Aaron Woods left the club to go on to bigger and better things in most cases. So I posited last week that Benji needed to take a stand. Any Premiership team that I think every club is aspiring to be, you do not want players in that defensive line who do not want to be there. However, there is sometimes a case when you are one of those bottom half clubs, which I think the Tigers definitely are still, that can also get to a point where there's a diminishing return having that stance too. So I think if I was Benji Marshall, what I would like to see is a response from Lachlan Galvin in terms of his efforts in reserve grade, his efforts on the training paddock. I don't think the legal move is conducive to that in terms of the bullying and whatnot. I think we are getting very, very close to untenable now. So I think this discussion now moves to a contractual and a future employment conversation, whereas last week it might have been a football conversation. So I tend to agree with Soward that I don't know where they go from here. It's almost like who blinks first in this argument, because at the same time yesterday, Lachlan Galvin, a happy and contented Lachie Galvin, and a Lachie Galvin putting in yesterday would have probably helped the Tigers significantly in that game yesterday. They seemed in the closing stages of that game yesterday to lack a little bit of finish, their last tackle options at times and whatnot. So it's such a tough one now.
Yeah, but the thing about yesterday is they let in 38 points.
They did.
Okay, for as good as Lachlan Galvin's been, 23 try assists in the last 2 years, and I get the makeup of their side and how they've been playing. Let's not forget they've lost games this year where they probably should have won, and they've won games where they probably should have lost. The 38 points, some of the defensive reads on the edges, that's not Lachlan Galvin. Yeah,
No.
yeah, he might help them get another try, maybe two, but they still let in 38, so they still lose. I think the big problem is, what you said rightly, the conversation needs to be had between Benji and the players. This is going on between Shane Richardson and Isaac Moses. And they are the ones that are controlling we saw that yesterday. Richo being in the press conference is something that I've never seen before.
No.
Where we're not taking questions, but because of the league matter, I understand it. But they're the two that are saying, we don't want, when you get dropped to reserve grade, I always say reserve grade's the hardest thing to go and play. Because you've got to be selfish because you've got to try and get back up into that first grade side. But you also got to do the team thing and you've got to respect the guys that are part-time, right? Lachlan Galvin has just turned down $6 million. There is no amount of effort or anything yesterday or on the weekend that could have happened for him that would have made everyone go, he should be back in first grade, because it's just not going to happen. They will not play him in first grade ever again.
I probably wouldn't. But the other thing that I think's been unfair in the media is there was an assumption straight away that this was for money, this decision. But like you said, he's just turned down an awful lot of lucre to stay at the Tigers. So, and the official reasoning given, if you agree with what you read and hear, is that he thinks his development would be better somewhere else. Nothing about money. So I think
no one's ever going to say they're leaving for money. Our Australian culture would crucify if he came out, even though everyone behind the scenes knows that he's going to get a monster deal, right? You never say I'm leaving for money. It's just not the way the Australian culture is. You would never ever live that down.
Well, the Englishman in the corner here just got put back in his corner, didn't he?
I'm just telling you. Yeah, it's
no,
not,
you're right.
It's not the way. It's not the way to look at it. I think that all the smoke screens, when you come sit down to it, there's two parts to it. He may believe that he's going to get better coaching somewhere else, and that's up to him. Only he will know that. Not his manager, not anyone else. The other part is Dylan Brown, who we would say right now, Lachlan Galvin's on a trajectory that says he's going to be a representative player. Dylan Brown's got $13 million. Lachlan Galvin hasn't even scratched the surface yet and got off at 6.
The market's gone crazy. Are you sure you don't want that comeback, Sally?
No,
the market has
they
gone
don't touch
crazy.
the kickers now. I can play till I'm 50.
Well, you're only about as old as the Broncos halfbacks at the moment, aren't you? So roughly the same age.
Oh, and they're struggling at the moment, so I don't think I'd be any good.